Greetings, everyone. I'm Larry Williams, the director of the Center for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis, or CARMA, at Wayne State University. And it's October 21st, 2011, and it's my pleasure to have you joining us for this Meet the Methodologist interview session. And today our guest is Fred Oswald, who's here visiting us from Rice University. And later on today, he'll be giving his webcast lecture on practical issues in developing measures for psychological and organizational research. So, Fred, welcome to Detroit.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Pleasure to have you here. So I usually like to begin, Fred, by getting a sense of how our visitors got interested in research methods more generally, and specifically the topic of the lecture that you'll give later on today.
Sure. Well, first of all, Larry, thank you so much for having me here with the CARMA web series. It's really a pleasure and opportunity to contribute to what you've done collectively over the years, and we're really happy to do it. And in turn, I hope the audience will learn a thing or two. As far as my interest in research methods and the webcast topic, I guess that's a two-part question.
Yep.
My interest in research methods, I guess, came as a function of the person and the situation. It's true for any phenomenon. The person here is me, and I have always had a quantitative interest. I started my undergraduate work at University of Texas at Austin. Interested, or so I thought, in engineering and more of the hard sciences, and eventually, I'll spare you the long story, but I ended up obviously in IO psychology, where there's a balance between quantitative methods and human behavior. And so I found that balance, and I still find that balance very appealing. And so my research methods interests are balanced with substantive interests, like measuring and predicting job performance, or measuring individual differences like personality or ability or interests and motivation. My webcast topic deals with, I'm sorry, I didn't get to the situation side of the equation. The situation side, I'll say what really piqued my interest in research methods was a paper by Frank Schmidt called What Do Data Really Mean? And it was a provocative article about the nature of meta-analysis and the insights that it can provide. And in reading it, I really felt, I think anyone reading it would agree that the language is fairly strong for the benefits of meta-analysis. And so in reading that more critically, it whetted my appetite to really understand what meta-analysis was about, and how to go about pursuing it and improving it was really some things I attempted to do in graduate school and actually continue to do today. So it was both being exposed to methods within IO psychology as well as being a quantitatively minded person that keeps my interest. The webcast topic deals with practical measurement issues, which for me is spurred on by the need for organizations to shorten their measures. They simply, for a variety of reasons, don't have enough time to measure perhaps what they want to measure. And researchers at the same time have complex theories which call for measuring more constructs, which, if you have the same time period, presents itself as a challenge. So that practical issue is what led me to exploring more generally the practical issues in measurement that we face, particularly in IO psychology and dealing with applied settings. How can we tie in those practical demands with what we know from our psychometrics courses?
Okay, so you end up at Minnesota in graduate school, and I'm wondering whether you had a favorite research methods course that you took while you were there, and if so, why was that particular one your favorite?
Mm-hmm. My favorite methods course, and I'm smiling, I'll tell you why in a minute. My favorite methods course was structural equation modeling, taught by Bob Kudek. So the first reason why it was my favorite is that I learned a lot. He interestingly taught it as exploratory factor analysis for perhaps more than half the course. And then, as I'm wondering when is this going to become a structural equation modeling class, that's when the constraints come into place. He starts explaining how once you know the guts of exploratory factor analysis, and you put these constraints in place, you all of a sudden have confirmatory models and structural models as well. So that's why, I learned a lot. That was one reason why it was great. The other reason why it was great is that he brought catered lunch to us hungry graduate students every week. And that helps you make any course memorable.
I don't get any ideas for the Wayne State people that are here. It does sound like a great idea. So, since your lunch needs were taken care of, do you recall any particular challenges you faced in learning about research methods as a graduate student?
I think the challenges I faced would be the challenges any graduate student would face in approaching a domain that's of interest to them. And that challenge is, first of all, figuring out what is important. And you can only get to that point by doing a lot of reading and figuring out where the common themes are across what you read, and getting to the core of what a method is about. And then the other challenge builds on that, which is finding connections between ideas within a domain. So in research methods, for example, there are connections, like I was saying, between exploratory factor analysis and structural equation modeling. There are connections between structural equation modeling and item response theory. There are all these connections that can be made, but it takes some work, and that's definitely a challenge, and continues to be an enjoyable challenge to figure out where these connections lie and how they are important.
Yeah. So from your graduate student days, you've gone on and have a very successful career as a faculty member at Purdue and Michigan State, and now at Rice University. And because of that success, I'm sure you have considerable experience as a reviewer for substantive papers using analytical techniques for which you have expertise. Could you comment on what you see as some of the most frequent limitations or shortcomings of the papers that you review, either in terms of theory or research methods?
Sure. As a reviewer and in my new editorial roles, I see two fundamental limitations, general limitations, since you're asking a general question. One is that of clarity. Simply writing clearly will get you far. So in terms of adopting the reader's perspective, the reviewer's perspective, and writing the paper accordingly. So thinking about who is your audience is really important. The type of, what's their background? Do they have a business background or a psychology background? You're going to be writing to an educated audience, so you don't need to pander, to them. But you do need to speak perhaps more broadly than you would need to speak to people within your particular area. So clarity is one issue that I see a lot. Another issue is importance. So in terms of, again, that goes back to knowing your audience, to figuring out what's important for them. But then, framing a good conceptual story around it. You could have two studies that have the same data. It is the same data. Let's say it's the exact same study, same research design, same results, and one paper could be accepted because of the conceptual framing around it, and yet the other paper may not get accepted because of a lack of sensitivity to the audience. So I think clarity and importance are both very big challenges that any writer needs to make to get through the review process successfully.
One of the questions that I like to ask our presenters that's always of interest to me is whether they have a favorite research methods book that either influenced them greatly or upon which you rely upon regularly currently. Mm-hmm. So what comes to mind with you?
I'll answer both those questions. So one book I turn to quite frequently is the Blue Book, Caselli, Campbell, and Zedek, their psychometrics book. what is it, measurement theory for the behavioral sciences. It has some very practical estimation formulas. So you want to know, for example, the correlation between two composites when you have the correlations between all of the variables. How do you do that? So I use that as a, I wouldn't say use it every day, but it's one I turn to quite a bit. And then in terms of specific, there are other books that I view as very important, but they're project driven. It depends on the project that I'm doing. So for example, right now I'm working on a measurement and variance project, and the new book that just came out by Millsap on measurement and variance has been very important and useful. So a lot of times the books that are important are the books that just happen to speak to your area at the time, the most current, interesting books.
Yeah, since you mentioned Millsap, let me make a plug. Roger visited us a couple of years ago, and we do have a webcast lecture by him on measurement and variance that's in the CARMA video library. So Fred, you've been in the gig for long enough as an author and as a reviewer and as an editor, and I'd like to ask if you kind of take a step back in a macro, big picture kind of view. Are there areas within the fields of research methods and data analysis that you think we do a particularly good job of investigating or a particular bad job of investigating as methodologists?
Well, as far as what we do well, I think we can all agree that a multi-level approach to research has been very important and very strong, and you see real developments within our field, both theoretically and analytically. So, you look at multi-level work by Gleasy, by Edwards, by Ployhart. I'm sure I'm leaving out names. Harrison. I mean, there are a lot of great psychologists that have dedicated work toward multi-level thinking in theory and analysis. And so I think we've done a great job there. As far as what we've I don't want to say what we've done poorly, but where we
areas where we could improve.
We could advance, right. I would say Bayesian analysis is an area where we could improve. That if you look at other disciplines in the sciences, they're way far ahead of us in terms of Bayesian thinking and analysis. It's been called a Bayesian revolution, in fact, because with modern day computing power, you can compute these, generate and sample from these posterior distributions with Monte Carlo, Markov chain Monte Carlo studies that you couldn't do before. And so that really is what has led to the revolution. And we are getting there. You're starting to see books that apply to the social sciences and Bayesian data analysis. So Jeff Gill has a book. I think off the top of my head, I want to say Jackman has a book. There are a few books. Scott Lynch has a book. So I think these ideas will percolate more and should percolate more into IO psychology and organizational research.
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, you've been quite successful in your career as a scholar, and so I'm wondering if you would like to take advantage of the opportunity to share any advice that you might have for doctoral students who want to pursue a career as a researcher.
I will take advantage of this opportunity. In fact, I spoke with students earlier today about these issues, and my advice for students in the early stages is to go ahead and explore different areas. You might think you're interested in one topic, but you're going to graduate school to learn more broadly, and so why not read some things you may not naturally read. In fact, courses will make you do that if you don't do that yourself. Maybe go to a PSYOP session that you ordinarily wouldn't go to. You might surprise yourself and find different areas that appeal to you. It might change your course a little bit. At the same time, I would advise graduate students to get involved in publications as early as possible. It may not be the best fit for you, but you learn research skills that will then transfer to your future projects that might fit you better and to your future success. So those are some quick pieces of advice that I would give to graduate students pursuing an academic route.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, you are here to give a lecture as part of our consortium webcast program. And I was wondering if you could briefly kind of describe the origins of and give a brief summary of what you're going to be talking about later this afternoon.
Well, the origins of the webcast deals with what I had mentioned earlier. So the idea that there are these organizational constraints put on measurement that then might challenge what we've learned in terms of psychometrics and developing measures in a psychometric tradition. So how do we deal with that tension will be kind of it's the source or the inspiration of my talk. I've dealt with developing measures for a long time now. In particular, I've worked with the College Board for about 10 years and on developing situational judgment tests and a biodata inventory, and then dealing with how those measures are actually going through the steps of the measure development process with the College Board. And through that, I think I can communicate some general principles related to those steps when it comes to generating content for a measure, ensuring reliability and validity, the things we worry about in psychometrics, while keeping an eye on those organizational constraints or challenges as well.
As we close, I'd like to ask a couple of questions kind of related to more personal issues. I'm wondering, as I encounter different people in our profession, they have a lot of different hobbies, a lot of different interests, things that they do. Is there anything special that you do that helps inspire you or helps draw motivation into your scholarly work?
Well, as far as substantive, as far as the work side of the equation and where I draw my inspiration, I've had a number of great colleagues, and I won't name them all for fear of ignoring some of them, but I've had a large number of terrific, supportive, enthusiastic, smart, hardworking colleagues, and I really appreciate being a part of that community. That's been highly inspiring. I've been fortunate to have great students, and that has really, to see students develop, maybe not necessarily in my own image, but to develop and learn from me as part of building their own career and their own journey in their substantive and methodological research. That's been very inspiring to me. And when as I told students earlier today, in reading about a flow state, when you're at work and you're feeling flow, time just passes by quickly and you're really enjoying yourself. When am I in that flow state? It's when I'm working with students, it's when I'm immersed in a paper writing, it's when I'm doing data analysis. That's where I get, enjoyment and then inspiration to keep doing the work.
Yeah. Well, so that's kind of the positive side. What would you describe as the least favorite parts of your work?
Well, I think we have a pretty good gig here as professors, you and me, Larry. I don't think we can complain too much about anything that is bad, although you may have stories that outdo mine. I don't like meetings that are unproductive. I don't like filling out forms that are tedious. Some of the usual concerns we have in the first world. But I'm generally very happy with my job, the autonomy it provides, and life could be a lot worse.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. Well, Fred, we really appreciate you taking the time to participate in this, what is hopefully we strive for an informal chat session, and I hope our viewers will be interested in the perspectives that you shared, and we're really looking forward to your webcast this afternoon.
Great.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
All right.